Trying to push uphill through this rocky dirt while digging with the bucket is a perfect way to compare these two machines. Hey, it's Brock here from Rock Hill Farms, and today I want to do a real-world comparison between this Bobcat 2035 hydrostatic compact tractor and the John Deere 2038R hydrostatic compact tractor. Now, I think these are very good machines to compare to each other because horsepower, price, size, it's all very similar. Now, I think the perfect tractor to compare to this one would be a 3038E instead of a 2038R. But the differences between those are pretty negligible. So this is a $29,000 tractor the way it sits. The John Deere is $31,500 or $32,000, somewhere in that range. And that 3038E would be about $3,000. So the two John Deere machines are a little bit more expensive. But the horsepower is 35 here. It's 38 on those other ones. And we'll go into all of the specs, the listed specs, everything I can think of to compare these head-to-head. Wheelbase, length, height, lift capacity, everything I can measure. But I'm going to do that at the end of the video. Right now, what I want to do is try to accomplish some work and see which one works better. The way it is right now, the deck is stacked in favor of the John Deere because I'm expecting this machine to run out of traction before it runs out of power. And the difference is how much weight is on the machines. So the John Deere has the cab, which is heavy. It has 3 sets of wheel weights, which are heavy. It has fluid in the tires. That's a dramatic amount of extra ground force it's going to get. So what I'm going to do to try to level the playing field is I'm going to hang a box blade on the Bobcat with weights on the box blade to try to weigh it down, and that weight is off the back as a ballast, as a counterweight, instead of on the axle. So that'll help a little bit in leveling the playing field, and normally I always run with a rear implement. I'm going to run the John Deere with no rear implement. Okay, so as I did that, what I'm looking for is this machine was better at this one was better at that, this joystick feels better, this bucket cuts better, This one has more power, less power. One's more unstable. And I tell you what, I was on that Bobcat and I'm running it and I thought, man, what a great feel this tractor has. I love the size, the open station. I feel connected to everything around me. It was not having any problem really pushing up this unless I got too much ground pressure and lifted the front tires. And I thought, man, the Deere is going to struggle with this and it's going to be a clear win for the Bobcat. Well, that wasn't really what happened. I got the same result with the John Deere. They both feel very capable to do what I'm doing right here. And there's nothing about the operation of either machine that bothered me. One thing I'll note, and it could be the weight in the rear tires, I don't know, but when the John Deere struggles to push, what it does is makes more of a higher pitch whining noise, the fluid going through the overflow. The Bobcat was spinning the wheels, so it felt more like maybe it hadn't reached its limit of what it could do, especially with more weight on it.
At this point, I'm not trying really to quickly and efficiently grab some rock. What I'm trying to do is see what happens if I just continue to try to push straight in. Because my purpose here is to compare the tractors more than it is to move the rock.
Okay, going into the dirt, I did not have a winner between those two tractors. Digging on that hill felt about even. With the rock, I have a winner, and there are a few reasons for that. Really, two reasons. Pushing into this, I had more power with the other tractor. And I think there are two main reasons. It's not really like a Bobcat's better than John Deere reason, but my tractor is a 2-range hydrostat, and this Bobcat is a 3-range. The 3038 that I'm talking about, which is one size bigger than mine, is also a 3-range. And I think low, if you imagine like 5 speeds you could have on a hydrostat, it's like a 3-range has gears 1, 3, and 5. And my 2-range only has gears 2 and 4. High isn't as high, low isn't as low, and there's no medium. So going into low range on the Bobcat has me essentially lower geared, and that helps. The other reason is it has bigger tires. That 3838 also has bigger tires. So that's the first reason. I have more power to push into this pile with the Bobcat. Second reason that the Bobcat won that little test is stability when turning. So in both cases, I had the same size bucket full of the same rock, the same amount of weight out in front. One has a ballast, the other has a counterweight. Counterweight's more effective. Ballast, in this case, is much heavier. But it's again about the tires, I believe. Because right here, we're on a slope this way. And I bet on camera it looks flat. It's not flat. We're on a slope this way, and we're on a slope this way. And when I come down this, I need to turn right here. And I've got my weight, maybe my bucket about a foot off the ground, just so I'm not scraping. And as I turn right here, in the Deere, I've got 800 and some hours on it. I've never flipped it over, but as I'm turning, I'm like, make sure that's all the way down, the bucket's down, and go really slow. I feel more stable turning across this hill with the Bobcat. I think it's just feels a little bit like a wider wheelbase, which we'll measure at the end, and bigger tires. I think that's the difference. So I would rather move that rock with the Bobcat. The next thing I want to do is a lift capacity test. And I don't want to try to measure exact lift capacity because I don't think it's all that relevant to try to get a perfect number in a perfect world. Are you measuring at the pins or out further? Are you at full height or an inch off the ground? I want to talk about things that people with a tractor like this are going to frequently want to move. One of those things is a firewood tote. Another is a hay bale. And those two things weigh about the same amount, excepting that there's a lot of variation for how wet or dry it is. So green oak might weigh 1,500 pounds. Dry seasoned wood that's a little bit lighter species might only weigh 1,000. But we're going to say this is like 1,300 pounds, somewhere in that range. Hay bales, same way. Smaller hay bales might be 1,000 or less. Big ones are 1,500. If it's saturated with rain and it's really wet, it could weigh 2,000. But generally, these are about the biggest things you're going to want to try to pick up with that tractor, is a hay bale, or even more so than that, a firewood tote. I don't need to try picking this up with my tractor, the John Deere, because I've done that test multiple times and it's an irrelevant test at this point. Because when I got my tractor, I could lift these about an inch off the ground and just barely move with them. Switched to the MSL loader, I got that up to about knee height. And then I increased my hydraulic pressure, I put on a bigger pump, I put on new hydraulic cylinders, and now I can lift 2 of these if I needed to. So comparing it today is irrelevant. I've done a ton of modifications. But I know what these weigh, and it's a good test for the Bobcat, which has a listed lift capacity of 1,400 pounds. Tractor's rated for 100 pounds more lift capacity than my 2038, but it can't lift as much. And those are just the numbers and the reality. Something I find really interesting and problematic actually is it has more lift capacity than curl capacity. And I think that's a dangerous thing. I think you should have more curl capacity than lift capacity. Because if you ever get something up in the air and then the hydraulics sag a little bit and you're worried you might lose it off the end, if you can't curl what you've already lifted, you have a problem even setting it down, because when you come down, that's when you could dump it. You need to be able to curl at minimum as much as you can lift. So when we were doing the lift capacity test on that New Holland Workmaster, we had these 4 logs that you see right here that we were using for weights. We had 600, 1,800, 1,000, and 1,200. So let's start with the 1,000-pound log, because we just found out we can't do 1,500. So I've already done a video talking about this having a clutch and how it eases into your PTO a little bit better, and that it's a more simple design. It's a dry clutch instead of a wet clutch. But to me, overall, I would prefer not to have this pedal. It's just one more thing that's different, or it's one more step to the process. And it means that you can't start the tractor from out of the tractor seat unless you're like manually holding down that clutch pedal. So, not a big deal, because I adjusted to it very quickly and I'm not having to think about what I'm doing to use it. But it is a difference. Now, emergency brake is something I always talk about, and I generally like the automotive style emergency brakes. But this one grew on me pretty quick. It's a little different than what I'm used to. So, to release your emergency brake, hit the pedal, it's off. And then to set it, you go 1, 2, and then get off the tractor. On, that's on, off, on, off. I kind of like it. One thing I am not a big fan of is this shift lever. So I've got my clutch down, and it's kind of hard to get it into certain gears sometimes. And like if I'm in neutral and I'm trying to go into medium and it doesn't want to, with the tractor running, I just hit the hydrostat pedal and then try again and it will go. And that's not a big deal. It's like it's not meshed up. And just by bumping that pedal, it will free it up and then it'll pop in. But my tractor, my John Deere, doesn't do that. With the 2038R, it's about like shifting your automatic transmission on your car. It just slides in and out. Several things on this feel more manual, just like the PTO. It's a lever that's manually engaging your PTO instead of an electric switch that engages it. Personal preference on that, I guess. The loader joystick is down lower. I don't have armrest, which I like the armrest, but this does have a suspension seat and mine doesn't. So I like the joystick position on my tractor a little bit better. This is a long lever that goes way down, but to put this in float, for instance, right now it's in the center position. Right now it's going down. To go to float, I'm traveling a long way. My hand's going like 8 inches to put it in float. Whereas with mine, it's a small movement, you know. Not a big deal, but we're looking for those differences and pros and cons, preferences, little stuff. We have a nice comfortable position for the range selector, the PTO, and the 3-point drop. The biggest negative I have on this tractor is that it does not have auto throttle or the linked pedal, whichever you call it. I'm a big fan of that. I don't like a lot of the advanced features that get put on tractors, but I like auto throttle, and this does not have it. Another thing we can mention from the operator station, this is a metal fender. There's not a bunch of extra plastic stuff. There's not a bunch of electronics to go wrong on it. Now, part of that is because there's features that mine has that this doesn't. But this is a more simplistic design, and I prefer the metal hood and the metal fenders. Now, also, when you look at them, a lot of times these fenders don't come out and cover the tire. So, see, my tire's sticking out 8 to 10 inches past. And that could be a situation where it's gonna fling mud on you if you're in some muddy ground. So I've mentioned I like the stability and I miss having the auto throttle. But one more thing about the actual operation is the shifter. It's a little hard to feel when it's in gear. Sometimes it feels like medium is a little in front of the medium when I put it in gear, and sometimes it's right even with it. And a couple times I thought I was in gear and let off the brake and pushed the hydrostep pedal and it didn't move. Turns out I was in neutral. Same thing, like, why won't it start? Oh, I thought it was in neutral, but it wasn't. It's a little bit finicky, and sometimes you have to push the pedals to get the lever to shift. So, just a small thing that I noticed. Lined the two back wheels up perfectly on these two tractors, and now we're looking. I know these numbers are online, but they're within an inch of each other on the length of the machine. Now on the width, I've got wheel spacers on the John Deere, which takes it from 58 out to 60. This is about 62 to 63. I don't know what it's listed at, but just measuring across the back of it, this machine is about 3 inches wider compared to my wheel spacers and 5 inches wider than a stock 2038. Measuring across here, front tires, 53 inches. We're at 48 inches on this. And those extra 4 or 5 inches difference in the width of the machine matters. It also matters that this machine weighs 1,000 pounds more on the list weight. It says that with the loader it weighs 4,000 pounds, and this one with the loader weighs 3,000. It doesn't feel like it because I've added 1,400 pounds to the back of mine, and the back of that's 400 for the cab, 500 for the fluid in the tires, 400 for the wheel weights. And so I've added 1,400 pounds to this one, and it stays planted while this one doesn't, as far as lifting the same amount of weight. Can't tell you what the difference is there. I'm just telling you what I see. I also saw a cash price on this at $26,000. Finance price might be $29,000. The only price I got on this was $31,000 about 6 months ago from my local John Deere dealership. The 3-point on this one is rated to lift about 1,400 pounds. The 3-point on this one is rated to lift 1,300 pounds. With those two features, this can push and pull harder. This one can lift just a little bit more. As far as the difference in how they feel operating them, it's about the same. I prefer mine a little bit more in ergonomics, but I'm also used to it. This one has a big advantage in that it feels more stable on the side of a hill. You can save a couple $1,000s getting this machine instead of that one and get the same work done just as well, unless you need to move a firewood tote. Now, the reasons you might want this one are some John Deere specific things, like the option to get a self-leveling loader. You can't get that on the Bobcat. I've also talked about other things I like from John Deere, like the drive over mid-mount mower deck and how easy it is to put the backhoe on and off. I think those two categories will be wins for my tractor. It's pretty competitive when you can save money and have more pushing and pulling power. The other option is you can get the 3-range transmission and the bigger wheels from a John Deere 3038, but then you're going to pay even more. So it's a tough decision between these two tractors, and it's not my job to give an answer. It's my job to just tell you what I see and let you decide. We also need to talk about the elephant in the room when we look at this tractor, and that is Coyote. Coyote is a brand of tractors sold in the U.S. owned by a company called Dejong, however you pronounce it. And that same company is also making the Bobcat tractors. So they're almost an identical tractor. The difference is that Bobcat puts their own loader on this tractor. And they may have reasons why they like their loader better. They may want a certain lift capacity. The same tractor from Coyote, I believe, would be the 2635. I may be messing up the model numbers. Something like that. And I've ran that tractor. And this has a rated lift capacity of 1,400 pounds, where this with the self-leveling loader is rated at 1,300 pounds. That same tractor from Coyote, the same, almost exact same machine as this, is rated at 1,800 pounds. And it will lift those totes because I've seen it. So, and it'll lift it better than this machine. So, when you're looking at Bobcat versus this John Deere versus a Coyote, you're going to be choosing a dealer preference. And keep in mind that with the Coyote, you're going to get a little bit more lift capacity. So I hope this video was helpful to someone who's in the market for a tractor. I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.